Hey there, fellow night owls and patient hearts. Tonight, the candle sits where 2 centuries meet. Victorian notions of courtship peeking in at a medieval door, curious and a little formal, while the village keeps its ordinary pace. No banners, no processions, just a lane, a low roof, and the kind of promise that prefers kitchens to ballrooms. Settle in. The small hours know how to hold a vow without waking the house. If these quiet histories help the mind unclench, a soft like or a gentle subscribe is enough. Small nods travel far in the dark. And in the comments, whisper a greeting from wherever the clock has found this room. Lanterns answer lanterns, and distance behaves better when named. Now dim the screen, and let the modern fan become an old hearth by pretending well. We'll walk together into a room where present tense words can bind a future, where beeswax, bread, and 2 steady hands explain romance more plainly than any scroll. Breathe low and slow. The night will do the rest. You sit by the hearth where light behaves like a polite guest, staying to the edges and speaking in whispers, a small candle sighing as it softens the dark into amber. Tonight is not a wedding, not yet, but a promise shaped in present tense words, because in medieval England consent spoken here and now could bind more tightly than any ribbon. The room notices how carefully hands move when love is near. A ring warmed by the flame, a ribbon straightened twice, a sleeve brushed smooth and left imperfect on purpose. There is no organ, no procession, only the quiet company of tallow and beeswax and a resolve that does not require witnesses, though witnesses would make mourning simpler. Outside, the lane holds its breath, the way lanes do in market towns after curfew, when boots have memory and shutters remember the last storm. Inside, a thin curl of smoke becomes a private alphabet. You read it as patience. Another reads it as courage. The candle reads it as work. Victorians will later give candles meanings about propriety and timing, arranging visits by the measured fall of wax. But here the measure is a vow spoken in the present. Take me now means I consent now, and in this age that is a structure stronger than oak, however much the families pretend otherwise at supper. The table is set with bread someone pretends not to care about, and a cup someone pretends not to refill. Romance prefers ordinary bowls to gilded plates. You practice saying a name the way vows will later practice saying to have and to hold, words that will travel centuries and dress themselves differently in prayer books. There are rules, of course, because there are always rules. Seasons for banns, doors of churches, porches built like careful parentheses around the moment. But the law inside the room is simple. A present tense, yes, a small gift understood as a wed, and the hush that follows when both hearts keep the same time. You straighten the candle, then realize it is already straight. Order likes to be seen, at least trying, when promises are made. Wax gathers in a neat pool, and you think of how futures gather too, patient and a little shy, waiting for a tilt of the hand to become a shore. Someone knocks without intention. Wood cooling, a bean settling, yet the sound is properly timed as if the house wishes to be counted among the witnesses. No ledger takes the note. Not yet. Validity here is a matter of present consent and the memory of 2 people who intend to remember. You test the sentence that matters by folding it into another. Stay, then, if the flame agrees. Stay, if the room agrees. Stay if the world can be smaller and kinder for a night. The candle does not argue. It never does. It offers a little more shore for the wax to find, Romance often borrows the clothes of chivalry, but the fit is different in a kitchen. No banners, just a clean board and a careful knife turned edge down. Courtly tailies speak of quests. This is a homecoming disguised as a beginning, with domestic courage standing in for armor. You consider an exchange, a ring, a ribbon, a modest token whose meaning is louder than silver when the room is this quiet. Tradition will later script the vow like poetry, but tonight the grammar is yours spare, certain and warm at the edges. The future is practical in medieval England. Lords to be asked, goods to be listed, a bed to be blessed, or at least agreed upon in whispers. Still, present consent is a lantern. It travels ahead and says this road exists, and both of you are already on it. Someone laughs in the lane, the kind of laugh that proves the world is not entirely ceremonial. It helps. You relax the shoulders, find the low pace of sleep talk, and let romance live where rest is welcome. The candle leans as if listening, wax writing margins along the saucer. A finger trace sets them even. Beeswax smells faintly of fields and patient work, and patience is the gentlest chaperone. Outside, church doors will later matter, porches receiving vows like calm harbors, but doors are not masters of meaning. Consent is. The room keeps your secret until it becomes a custom, then keeps the custom until it becomes a story told softly. You practice inventory like lovers and quartermasters both. Cloak, cup, ring, bread, the word yes again. Chivalry would add a banner. You add a napkin folded with intent not to stain what is still becoming sacred. In some centuries, candles will time courtship, spiraling iron, marking how long a father allows, but here time is the length of a vow and the kindness of a pause. No hourglass is necessary when breath sets the measure. Slow in, slower out, a liturgy taught by quiet air. If a priest comes later, he will find the work already begun, vows spoken in the tents that builds houses. If a ledger closes over names, it will merely be catching up to what was said when the room was small and the flame was brave. You turn toward the door, not to leave, but to imagine leaving together, which is a different practice entirely. The latch knows how soft a sound can be, and still count as an oath. The promise is not grand. It is properly portioned, like bread meant to last a week. You break it, share it, and the candle nods as if to say that sharing is the only arithmetic love respects. Later ages will embroider the words, set them to music, print them in books that carry many names across many altars. But here the book is the table, the ink is breath, and the script is written in present tense warmth. You do not rush the line that matters. You let it arrive the way winter sun does, unhurried, convincing by simple persistence. A yes that repeats is not redundancy. It is architecture. Outside, the lane remembers markets and processions. Tonight, it memorizes footsteps that will soon be paired. Inside, two voices move at the same slow pace until they are one voice that rests. There is a tradition of garlands and of porches and of doors that open like witnesses, but the door most faithful is the mouth that says the thing in time. The candle brightens, then settles, which is also a vow in fluent wax. You look not at the flame, but at what it makes possible. The face across from you, the ordinary, unheroic courage to mean a sentence. In chivalric books, love proves itself on roads. In kitchens, love proves itself on Wednesday nights. The ring is offered without ceremony, which makes it ceremonial in a better sense. A wed is any gift understood correctly, and tonight understanding is abundant. The world is quiet enough to hear bread break and wax shift and future tenses give up their distance. You speak the present as if it were already a home, because tonight, in law and in heart, it is. The room learns the measure of courage by how gently the cup returns to the table. The sound is modest, a vow-sized sound, as if even wood understands present consent. Outside, parish stones keep their own slow calendar, bands to be called, neighbors to be notified, but tonight remains a rehearsal that already counts. You rehearse the line without saying it aloud, tasting the grammar of now. In this age, saying, "I take you," in the present tense, can carry more law than signatures. Two right hands have their own ceremony, palm to palm, the old hand-fasting posture that turns a private breath into architecture. A ribbon lies ready, not for display, but as a small translation between feeling and proof. Any wed will do if both understand the meaning. The ring, when it appears, is less ornament than evidence, a quiet witness that fits inside a sleeve and still persuades a court if a court is needed. Church porches will matter soon, the way public thresholds collect promises so they can be seen and remembered by those who claim to forget nothing. For now the house borrows that duty, beams and boards hearing what the porch would hear if the night were wider. You think of bands like ripples sent forward 3 Sundays to let objections rise and settle, but ripples do not make the stone. The spoken consent does. Law walks slowly, but meaning walks at the speed of breath. Both arrive, though not always together. Outside, frost rehearses edges on the shutter. Inside, beeswax learns your names and stores them in a warm ledger that never travels. It is ordinary to be sacred at this hour, bread, a ring, a yes, each more convincing for refusing drama. Stories of courtly love talk about gardens and vows exchanged among hedges. Kitchens improvise their hedges out of steam and patience. A chair becomes an arbor if the promise is true and the pace is slow. You consider the porch again. Its purpose is not weather, but witness. A public ear built of stone, so private words can survive the winter. Yet the canon remembers that a marriage can be built with present words alone. Form helps, meaning binds. Right hands meet and part. Wax pools, cooling into an oath-shaped oval. Breath pairs itself into a shared metronome. The inventory of love remains practical. Token, words, intent, bread, a plan for morning. Morning will ask for names at the door, and perhaps a priest who will arrive like punctuation. Useful, clarifying, but not the sentence itself. The porch will host the syllables. Neighbors will approve by staying quiet. The ring will pretend to be nothing at all. You practice the simple formula that has carried couples across centuries. I take thee, now in the present, not deferred like a promise held on a high shelf. Words that fit in one breath often prove the strongest. Courts remember them because hearts do. A quiet debate visits the room. De presente or de futuro, now or later. The candle votes for now by burning here, not elsewhere. Later is careful, yes, but later can wander. Now stays and sets the table. You turn a coin in the light, test its edge. There were days when a coin split in two traveled as proof across pockets and borders. Tonight a ring will serve, less divisible, more circular in its argument. Neighbors know more than they say, and that mercy is part of the custom. Sleep towns do not begrudge vows made softly if morning brings order. Order, in this case, is a visit to the porch, a question to the priest, and 3 Sundays of patience. Victorian visitors centuries from now will repackage this patience in parlors with chaperoned chairs and clocks that speak in modest coughs. They will call it propriety and take notes in diaries. The candle has already been writing such diaries in wax. The law of the house remains. 2 voices, present consent, an exchange that the table would swear to if tables were called. The law of the lane waits outside, agreeable but formal, asking only that the porch hear what the room heard. You steady the voice to a sleep pace, because vows prefer low roads. Nothing shouted stays true by morning. A yes repeated softly is a plank laid twice, not a stutter. The notion of dowers passes through the room like a clerk with a lantern. Provision after death is also a kind of love. Rings are what remain when ledgers close. Rings do not argue when the season is unkind. In stories, knights prove love by leaving. Here love proves itself by staying awake long enough to agree on wheat and winter. The brave thing is not distance. The brave thing is detail. You trace the rim of the cup and think of porches again, arches built for hearing, not for grandeur. A village's memory needs stone to lean on. Still, the first draft of memory is written in the present tense at a table like this one. A knock may come tomorrow, not from fate, but from a priest with questions phrased like weather, mild, persistent, practical. The answers are already here. Yes, yes now, and yes with bread. Handfasting is both posture and promise, the right hands agreeing not to forget. Even courts respect the choreography. If a dispute rises, witnesses will be invented by how many ordinary things remember at once. The candle tilts and corrects itself, demonstrating the art of vows, small errors. Patient fixes a shared intention to remain upright. No one applauds, that is the mercy of kitchens. You place the ring not as a flourish, but as a resting. The circle is a kind of silence that keeps speaking. A ribbon waits to be useful, to bundle morning's tasks under a gentler name. In some houses, vows were made in bed, words hidden in linen like seeds. The church preferred porches. Both methods argued for sincerity. Rooms become chapels by intention. Doors become archives by echo. Victorian hearts will later claim romance as decorum, arranging flowers to tell time. Medieval hearts keep time by labor and consent. Different calendars, same truth. A present tense yes is the hinge of the house. You tidy the table as if the future were a guest already in the lane. And it is. Futures are punctual when invited properly. A clean board is a better witness than a noisy street. There will be a feast someday, modest or not, and perhaps a mass, but feasts are annotations. The text is spoken tonight. Annotations are welcome. They help the village read. If someone asks later where it began, the answer will be in the present, because that is both place and time in this law. If they ask who witnessed it, the answer will be bread, wax, and 2 right hands. You lower the voice to a lull. Promises love sleep, and sleep loves promises made without haste. The candle agrees by becoming smaller without becoming less. The porch will open in the morning like a book that knows the plot. Door, step, sky, a little wind to turn the pages. Words will stand where everyone can see them, which is to say where everyone can rest. Victorian diaries will say many things about innocence and duty. The kitchen keeps its own diary and crumbs and rings. Neither book is wrong. Both are hungry for proof arranged in good order. You try the vow complete, not aloud, not yet, but complete. It fits the room the way winter fits roofs necessary, promising warmth. When it is finally spoken, it will seem like something the house knew before you did. Night deepens, which only helps. Vows are brighter when rooms are quieter. Tomorrow can have the porch. Tonight keeps the candle and the grammar of now. In this age, love is valid when consent is present. Everything else is dignity added like careful stitching. The stitches are worth the time, but the cloth is already whole. You place the ring in the flame's circle, not to test it, but to bless it with ordinary light. The metal remembers the hand that shaped it. Hands remember too. They will know where to go in the morning. The last task is simple. Agree to remember agreeing. Memory is the quiet steward of vows. Then put out the candle as if closing a book, confident the story can find its way to daylight. The door opens with the sound of careful weather, and there is the face that has been living in the candlelight even before the body arrived, a presence the room already made space for. Eyes learn the room first, then the hands, then the air that will soon carry words that are more shelter than music. A shawl carries the memory of the lane. A sleeve carries the idea of touch not yet taken. The mouth carries a smile made small on purpose, as if not to wake the vows. Names are said the way bread is broken with care, already shared even before teeth begin. Victorian hearts might send letters and seal them with wax. Here the wax is simply present to keep watch, and the letter is the way breath writes the room. A look travels across the table, learns where it will live, decides to live there. The partner sits, not opposite but within reach of the same candle's grammar. Wax brightens both faces without choosing. Right hands hover in the polite hesitation of people about to become architecture. There is a softness to this nearness that does not need chaperones. The house is older than any rule and kinder than most of them. The lane, listening at the sill, applauds by staying quiet. You speak first by not speaking, and the partner answers by staying, which is a sentence with no grammar errors. Then come words, small and exact, present tense fitted like a ring warmed by being imagined all day. The partner's voice is low, not secret, the way the sea is low when it keeps boats sleeping. It says yes without decorating the yes. Your yes arrives to match it, and the candle believes you both. Hands find the old posture palm to palm the handfasting that makes witnesses of bees and boards. It is the simplest choreography, taught by need, remembered by law. You notice the partner's details now that attention has permission, a scar near the knuckle, a thread pulled smooth at the cuff, a laugh saved for later in the corner of the mouth. These are proofs no court requires, but every heart keeps. If a porch waits for morning, it is patient. Tonight the table is the threshold, and the partner's glance is the arch you move under. A ring rests in a small circle of light, already a vow by proximity. The partner takes it the way one takes a breath after work, aware of the weight, grateful for how a circle simplifies nothing and promises everything. Wax nods in tiny agreements, as if bees understand property better than clerks. Victorian diaries would write this scene with borders and margins. The kitchen prefers marginless pages, bodies close enough to edit each other's sentences. There will be time for porches and bands. There is time now for the warm, direct now. The partner's hand turns yours and studies the lines as if to read weather and harvest. Patience here, a stubborn summer there, a winter that will not be allowed to win. You let the reading finish. Prophecy is not needed, but attention is holy. Vows are practiced softly, exchanged like tools in a field. Take, keep, return, care, repeat. The partner repeats them, adds a quiet flourish of humor that makes the room remember to breathe. Someone passes outside, boots careful about secrets. The step counts to 3 and moves on. Inside, the count is 2. Your voice, the partner's, turning toward 1. A ribbon appears, unassuming as rain. It waits for wrists that want the language of being kept, not as capture, as keeping company. You tie it lightly, and the knot decides to be modest. The partner lifts the ring. Metal learns skin, and the circle speaks in the oldest accent the room knows. You answer with a palm, a pulse as small astonishment at being understood. There is romance in this patience, in not hurrying the minutes that will soon be anniversaries pretending to be ordinary hours. The partner tilts a smile like a lantern, and the floor feels steady under both of you. Victorian halls will choreograph distance. This house choreographs closeness without spectacle. The ceremony here is not performance, but practice, a rehearsal that is already the thing itself. You speak the words again, softer, so memory can learn them. The partner catches each syllable with both hands, as if gathering grain. Bread waits patient nearby, ready to be divided into promises practical enough to survive weather. There is a brief, blessed silence, the kind that kisses were invented to serve. Lips meet like neighbors who always meant to be family. The kiss is small, present tense, lawful by kindness, if not by statute. A laugh interrupts the partners, unafraid. Humor is the well that keeps vows from drying. You drink from it, relieved to love a person and not a statue. Right hands rest, linked, left hands manage the necessary. Ring straight, ribbon flat, candle safe, bread shared. Romance is a chore done beautifully. The partner steals a crumb and calls it a blessing. You speak of futures only in useful nouns: roof, field, blanket, winter, feast. The partner adds verbs: mend, fetch, sing, spare, keep. Between you, a grammar of care completes itself without help. If porches are for witnesses, let the morning be a witness. If bands are for peace, let 3 Sundays pass like benevolent elders. Tonight is for the small politics of touch, fingers cataloging the truth of presence. The partner's hair smells of smoke and cold air. Your sleeve smells of work and bread. Together they invent a perfume no court could doubt. Scent is the archivist of rooms. This one will be easy to find again. Another kiss, unhurried, because the room counsels unhurried things. Wakes shifts as if to bless, flame standing like a patient priest. You do not kneel, you do not rise. You remain, which is the most devout gesture here. The partner speaks a private vow you were not expecting, a single sentence about leaving things better than found, each day's ordinary rescue. You answer with an amen shaped like a promise to return the favor. A hand finds the back of your neck, not to claim, to comfort. The body knows how to say home when words are tired. Foreheads rest together, a bowed pair of doors that open toward the same room. The house keeps the quiet like a secret it trusts. Even beams are careful with their creaks. In such silence, love becomes a tool, and a shelter and a meal. Victorian lovers will keep letters. You keep the look across this table, which contains all the post a lifetime needs. It will be deliverable at any distance, arriving whenever called by memory. The ring catches a small, brave flare. Metal is honest about light. The partner watches it, then watches you, as if calibrating a compass that now points to a room instead of a star. You do not promise impossible weather. You promise blankets and patience and your share of the carrying. The partner nods, a gesture that feels like the world lowering its shoulders at last. Another silence, larger, not empty. It is the field where the day will plant itself. You decide together to let it grow undisturbed. Hands separate only to find each other again. Absence becomes a mere technique for improving presence. This is how love behaves when it knows it is wanted. A final look, no, a first look refined by everything that has been said and will be kept, and breath finds a matched pace without instruction. The candle learns your faces and memorizes them in the grammar of light. Outside, frost drafts a border around the moment, a frame only nature knows how to gild. Inside, warmth signs its name on both your hands and leaves the pen. You eat, you speak less, you allow quiet to be the furniture. The partner's smile becomes a habit. Some habits are vows that learned how to breathe. If a priest appears tomorrow, he will not find anything to fix. He will only find a house already furnished with yes. Justice prefers work that is finished kindly. Bread is blessed by being shared. Rings are blessed by being worn. Rooms are blessed by being believed in. Belief is easy at this hour. You lean close and say the smallest true thing a mouth can carry. Stay. The partner answers with the truest small thing a mouth can offer back. Here. The courtyard learns shadows before faces, lintel to well, as if privacy were a path one must pace slowly under watchful air. Chaperones arrive like furniture with opinions. An older aunt, a steward's wife, a maid too experienced to miss what hands intend. Their presence is not unkind. It is an architecture of eyes. Rules move with the sun. In noble or merchant houses, girls do not drift unobserved. Proximity is permitted, privacy is rationed, reputation keeps the household roof tight. Partners meet at measured distances, the kind that keep breath honest. A glance is permitted to travel. Touch asks for witnesses. Courtly books whisper their codes, service, secrecy, discretion. And the courtyard hums with that grammar made ordinary. Messages folded in errands, tokens disguised as work. Chaperones do not stop the river. They make banks for it, so no one claims the flood was accidental. The partner waits where light breaks into squares, hands set like calm animals. Between you a braid of etiquette and desire. Speak openly but softly. Stand close but not closer. Let the look carry what the fingers cannot yet risk. The older women see everything and forgive what is careful. In some households, tapestries hang like patient chaperones, listening for laughter that leans too far. In others, a porter coughs at opportune times, an instrument tuned to propriety. Rules exist, so tomorrow does not arrive wearing trouble. You exchange items lawful by custom, a ribbon to be remembered, a sprig of herb for health, the sort of gift a maid can praise without blushing. Secrets prefer ordinary wrapping. If the aunt nods once, it means the gesture knows its lane. Gestures have a lexicon. The partner's hand hovers above the well rope. Your hand hovers above the same, and in the distance between them lives a treaty. A draw, a pour, a cup offered safely by its rim. Touch is relocated into objects until vows can hire it back. Noble courts make theater of such restraint. Villages make economy. Either way, the code is consistent. Admiration without claim, service without presumption, speech that leaves room for a parent to enter the scene without changing its meaning. A chaperone adjusts a shawl that needs no adjusting, the universal signal that time is moving. You take the cue, not as fear, as choreography. Love learns the steps provided. Steps, after all, are what carry it safely through public rooms. Victorian descendants will later add calling cards and parlor chairs set at exact angles. Here the angles are cast by sun and stone, yet the principle holds. Introductions matter, rank speaks first, and distance can be devotion when handled gently. The partner speaks in the courtyard voice, clear enough for a witness to hear, soft enough for meaning to remain personal. You answer in the same register. The ant listens for weather, not thunder. When no thunder comes, weather is declared fair. A token travels, a small pin reimagined as safety, a bread heel, too much for one, the kind of kindness that chaperones like to see because it spends its warmth in public. Romance hides in plain chores, pleased to be mistaken for good manners. Courtly codes mention service. The courtyard translates. Carry water, lift baskets, mend a strap. Love proves itself by being useful where eyes can verify the proof. Even envy quiets when use is the argument. Your hands work near the partner's hands, parallel, not touching, discovering how closeness can be its own conversation. Fingers learn the partner's patience by watching how knots are untied. Eyes learn humor by where the smile hides before it appears. The steward's wife clears her throat. Not a rebuke, a punctuation mark. She remembers being young in a different courtyard with different shadows and the same rules. Rules persist because memory approves of them. A bench offers shade that shrinks distances without erasing them. You sit at an honesty's breadth apart, careful to let fabric be the frontier. The partner's sleeve moves like a tide that respects the shore. A breeze edits stray hair. No one intervenes. If a letter ever travels between you, it will travel as an inventory list with an extra word where only one was needed. If a ribbon must be returned, it will return attached to a more practical object. Courtyards prefer plausible errands. There is laughter, and it is small on purpose. Small laughter wears the right shoes in public. Big laughter belongs to evenings when walls and candles, not courtyards, take witness. The ant smiles into her stitching, which is permission enough. The partner tells a story about a market day when a cart lost a wheel and 5 strangers became a single hinge. This is how love speaks under supervision about hinges, about help, about how the world works when it is kind. You counter with a tale of bread saved at the last moment from rain. Courtly theory celebrates longing. Practice celebrates logistics. Longing learns logistics and becomes sustainable. A shared plan is an embrace that keeps its gloves on. Someone crosses the stones with the caution of a person carrying news. It is not news, only herbs. The scent redraws the air into rooms. Scents are allowed to touch what hands cannot. You stand when the partner stands. The chore resumes, which is to say the talk continues in movements. The steward's wife marks the rhythm and seems satisfied. Satisfaction is the rarest blessing, quiet, unannounced, and useful. A boy runs through, chased by a dog and a promise to slow down. Joy is not forbidden, only redirected. There will be games at harvest. There will be songs. There will be chances to stand nearer under torchlight where custom permits. For now, the day rehearses safety. Victorian etiquette will later outlaw first names in public until engagement unknots the rule. Here, names are used, but toned like bronze, respectful, resonant, without ringing too long. Even names have chaperones. The partner offers a palm for the weight of a basket, and for a moment your fingers read the map of that hand without touching it. Thickened skin where work insists, a line that breaks and resumes, a history you will learn slowly. Slowness is not a barrier, it is a road. Courtly love demands secrecy. Courtyards demand transparency. The compromise is clarity that looks like discretion. What you feel is plain. What you do is careful. People prefer careful. It lets them sleep. A bell marks an hour. Eyes recalibrate. Hours are also chaperones, escorting desire across thresholds without scandal. The bell does not scold. It shepherds. You practice the art of almost touching, almost saying, almost staying, because almost can be abundant when the future is near. The partner's smile is an agreement to meet the future halfway, in daylight, on the porch, with bands for company. When departure arrives, it arrives as good housekeeping. Tools returned, bench cleared, well rope coiled. You part with a nod shaped like continuation, not like leaving. Continuation is the highest form of permission. Chaperons drift back into doorways, becoming architecture again. The courtyard exhales, not from relief, from completion. Codes did their work. Hands kept their promises by not making promises they could not keep in public. You carry the day's small proofs. A shared chore, a matched pace, a story finished exactly where the other would have put the period. None of it is dramatic. All of it is decisive. In the shadow where the wall cools first, the air keeps a whisper of possibility, folded and stored. Tomorrow has a shape now, polite and sturdy, like a door that opens inward so as not to knock anyone off the step. The courtyard warms by degrees, not temperature so much as permission, the way an older ant's needle slows when talk turns from weather to names. Oversight is the household spine. Rooms open onto one another so that sight can travel without raising its voice. Privacy exists, but under supervision, like a lamb on a rope. Propriety is not suspicion, it is stewardship. Young people meet where errands explain them. Near the well, at the herb bed, along the gallery where a steward walks the accounts into order. There, conversation earns its supper by sounding useful first, tender second. Courtly codes float like banners no one bothers to hang. Serve, respect rank, be discreet. The courtyard translates them into chores and distances measured by sleeves. Desire learns to speak through helpfulness, which pleases chaperones and calms neighbors. Your partner arrives at the hour that makes the least noise. A basket, a coil of rope, a strip of leather to be mended give shape to the meeting. You stand within speaking distance, but beyond comment, which is an art taught by stone and sunlight. The ant stitches near the doorway, her presence an agreed-upon blessing. She does not hover. She radiates the reminder that futures travel best in daylight. The steward's wife checks the well, the gallery, the storeroom. Chaperonage is a circuit, not a single chair. Words move like water carried carefully. How was the market? How fares the miller? Is the road passable after rain? Under these questions sits the steady drum of yes. The drum is not for dancing here. It keeps time so hands can work near without thinking of distance too much. Victorian parlors will later invent furniture to enforce this music. Chaperones, calling hours, cards deposited like polite footprints. The principle is older. Public courtship, private restraint, reputations guarded because houses share roofs with their names. Nurness has rules. Palms touch objects, not each other. A handle, a basket, the lip of a jar passed carefully. A glance may travel longer than a hand, and thus becomes the hand's ambassador. Chaperones approve of ambassadors. They can be seen to work. The household hall, opened by design, remains a place of oversight, even as richer homes carve small rooms for comfort. Open sight lines are architecture's sermon on propriety. In such spaces, love becomes patient because it must be, and better because it learns how. A girl runs across with thread. The ant borrows her energy to fetch salt, creating space that is not quite private and not quite not. This is supervised kindness with corners blunted by custom. You borrow the moment to ask about sleep. The partner answers about dreams like weather that arrived on time. Courtly books insist on secrecy. Courtyards insist on clarity. The compromise is a language of half-lights. Phrases that carry their whole meaning only for the two who share them, yet remain harmless to everyone else. It is the ethics of a smile that doesn't spill. Your hands work a strap together. One holds taut. One knots slow. It is not touching, and it is exactly touching. Chaperones allow the lesson because leather is persuasive and knots are public. A good knot is a character reference. The bell marks the hour. The courtyard changes key. Midday allows more bustle, which means less scrutiny. Evening tightens rules as shadows lengthen into invention. You schedule tenderness the way one schedules bread in the bright part of the day. Victorian cousins will codify the bright parts. 3 to 6 in the afternoon, calling cards, precisely 20 minutes of mutual performance. Here the clock is a bell, a sunbeam, a steward's next task. Yet the doctrine holds. Chaperonage is a social guardrail, not a cage. A token makes the circuit. Sprig of rosemary for memory. A ribbon alleged to keep the pages closed. Tokens must be small and explicable, able to survive a maid's questions without lying. If the ant smiles at the herb, the exchange is notarized. Your partner's sleeve almost learns your sleeve. The space between is where patience keeps its tools. You memorize the hand by watching it work, where the thumb hesitates, where the nail bears a half-moon of flour, where a tiny scar pronounces a history of kitchens and fields. Oversight expands and contracts like breath. The steward's wife steps out to mind a cart. The needle pauses. 2 women compare recipes for thrift and comfort. In that breathing space, words grow a little braver, still public, now personal. You speak of bands as if discussing market days. 3 Sundays, no great fuss if no one shouts. The partner answers with the porch, stone for memory, air for witnesses. The ant hears logistics and relaxes, for logistics are the lullabies of households. Courtship, when it survives its story, often forgets its chores. but chores are the gate that gets a future across a courtyard without stumbling. Service is not a performance here. It is the primary language, and love is fluent. The dog that belongs to no one and everyone wanders through, accepts a kindness, and confirms that the scene is orderly. Animals are the eldest chaperones. They bark at harm and nap beside decency. Victorian rules will insist that hands stay separate. Medieval courtyards agree for their own reasons: reputation, alliances, the thin fabric between rumor and harm. The difference is the furniture. Less fabric here, more sky, the same caution. A story travels low and soft. The partner once slipped a loaf into an elderly neighbor's bag without credit. The aunt pretends not to hear and then praises thrift in general. This is how consent is won in public, not by oaths, by character observed repeatedly. You trade a promise that is not called a promise to carry the heavier end of a winter. The partner trades back to wake first and make the room warm enough for two. Such commerce passes every audit. The gallery shade is kind enough to draw you closer. Fabric still speaks for distance, but the eyes have switched to the language of certainty. A future is built here by increments. The porch tomorrow will only ratify what was already true in the sun. A small accident. Jar slips, your hand catches, the partner studies the other side. Permits a touch so brief it feels like a found coin. Chaperones allow it because gravity was the author. You let the moment file itself under safety, not secret. Courtly love delights in danger. Households delight in calm. Let the poets have balconies. Let the courtyard keep benches that do not tip. The romance here is adult in the oldest sense. It pays for what it breaks and prefers not to break anything. Light moves, shadows reorganize the law. As evening gathers, chaperones gather too, doors pulled half close to invite the day to be done properly. You step back one pace, a cue learned by anyone who hopes to harvest peace. Victorian manuals would write this as a rule. You keep it as a habit. Habits are warmer. They look like kindness from the outside and conviction from within. Your partner names the time for the porch tomorrow. The aunt hears the time and nods into her stitching. The steward's wife adjusts the plan to include her own errands, a way of saying approval without wasting words. Approval is a currency saved for this. The household exhales again. Tools stacked, rope coiled, baskets nested. These are signatures that close the day's contract. You and the partner walk toward separate doors along parallel paths that will meet by design, not by accident. At the threshold, you borrow the smallest lawful touch, fingers brushing the rim of the same basket, a shared grip that releases at once. It is plenty. It says yes without crowding the hour. The courtyard, satisfied, returns to its own business of cooling and listening. Night will seat itself on the stones, and the rules will sleep beside it, not as jailers, as guardians who know their love for the safety they purchase. By morning, the shadows will become instructions again, and the porch will open like a page to the line both of you have been writing carefully, together, in public light. The courtyard cools into evening scents, shadows gathering like careful witnesses who don't interrupt, only remember. Oversight doesn't vanish at dusk. It changes uniforms. Doorways become eyes, a bench becomes a listener. The well rope hums a steady warning not to hurry. Your partner returns by a plausible route, past the herb bed, across the gallery where accounts are spoken in low numbers, to the patch of stone that forgives standing still. Errands justify time here. Reputation sleeps better when footsteps can be footnoted. Rules arrive without speeches. No corners. No long disappearances. Conversation and chore must travel the same road. In this architecture, desire learns balance. A heart that carries its own reins. A hand that speaks through helpfulness first. There are codes older than tapestries. Service is devotion the courtyard applauds openly. Draw water, carry wood, mend strap, share bread. Courtly writers call it love. Stewards call it competence. Both prefer results that can be stacked and counted. The aunt resumes her post, needle paused as if the cloth is thinking. A maid lingers at the threshold, a soft-edged chaperone whose job is to sweep and to be seen sweeping. Oversight is most efficient when it looks like housekeeping. You and the partner angle toward the same task by different paths. One brings the bucket, one steadies the rope. Palms meet the world instead of each other, and the world passes information between them. Weight, pace, intention. This is the permitted touch. Work as an interpreter. Words stay public, meaning private. The road held, says the partner, which translates to the day allowed this. Bread will hold, you answer, which means the night will be kind. Courtyards like this language. It keeps trouble unemployed. Courtly theory praises secrecy. Households prize clarity. The compromise is discretion that looks like honesty from any doorway. No half-hidden corners, no long silences that rearrange reputations. Only a conversation that can survive being overheard without needing to apologize. Light thins into a rule. As the sun drops, distance grows by a finger's width. Evening asks lovers to prove they can stop on a slope. Stopping well is rehearsal for the porch, where stopping and speaking become law. A token circulates without drawing lines under itself. Rosemary for memory tucked into a basket handle, ribbon folded small enough that a practical eye can call it useful. Tokens must be audit-proof. They should explain themselves in 3 words when held by someone else. The partner lets a laugh escape like a polite bird. It lands and does no damage. Even laughter has etiquette in a supervised place. No declarations, only echoes. The ant hears the echo and moves 1 stitch forward, a blessing disguised as progress. You map the partner's patience by watching tools return to their places. Coil true, lid set even, blade sheathed facing inward. People who put things back gently tend to keep promises the same way. Chaperones notice. They trust what repeats. Victorian cousins will later write entire pamphlets on chaperones and seating angles. Here the pamphlet is weather and the price of grain. Yet the argument matches. Public courtship, measured steps, feelings with good posture. The bell takes 1 breath more, then speaks the hour. The sound rearranges the courtyard into closing shapes. Door lintels catch last light, buckets find their hooks. A boy chases a dog into a corridor of permission. Dusk is an usher. It points, it never shoves. Your near touch is a study in governance. Fingers pass the same rim of a jar, releasing exactly when prudence clears its throat. That throat is often a floorboard that knows when to creak. Houses help. They have a bias for peace. You trade a story good for public hearing. The market woman who fixes a torn hem with 1 pin and no complaint. The partner counters with the miller who measures generously when the wind is lazy. Kindness told out loud counts double. Courtly love speaks of longing as fuel. Courtyards refine it into light. Fuel burns hot and fast. Light lasts long enough to read. You prefer to read each other, one chore at a time, until the pages agree to bind. The steward's wife appears like punctuation again, checks the rope, counts the buckets by habit's abacus, and retreats satisfied. Satisfaction is the license lovers need most. It renews itself through order. You propose the porch in phrases that resemble a harvest plan. Tomorrow, first hour after prime, with witnesses and air. The partner nods in the grammar of yes and yes, and the aunt sets her needle with the decisiveness of someone who believes in calendars. Even in the last light, a courtyard keeps a soul for play. A broom becomes a staff for a child who guards an imaginary gate. You smile, the partner salutes the small guard. The aunt does not interfere with games that teach boundaries politely. Distance thins for a careful heartbeat as a basket wobbles. Your hand and the partner's correct together, a touch that exists only to repair balance. All oversight favors repair. Repair is the love language everyone agrees on. Victorian manuals will say do not touch. Medieval courtyards say do not need to. When need arrives, let it be obvious and brief, like rain on stone that dries before anyone can slip. Both codes desire the same ending, a quiet house that sleeps without worry. A little wind scavenges the heat from the stones. The scent of crushed mint rises, where a heel had reason to turn. Scents are legal touch. They enter freely, stay politely, and leave without remark. People borrow their courage from such honest visitors. Your partner names an elder who can stand on the porch with sympathy rather than inventory. You add a neighbor who knows when silence is worth more than testimony. Lists of witnesses double as lists of virtues. The aunt at last folds her cloth and issues the soft sentence that dismisses the scene. Not go, simply enough for today. Enough is a kindness that protects tomorrows. Lovers who accept enough are treated gently by households. You and the partner slow toward the parting, as if the ground had turned to respectful water. One last object transfers between hands, a handle, a lid, so the fingers can say farewell in the official language. Then distance resumes its responsible size. Doors hold their breath while people pass. The courtyard remains, a room without a roof, charged with the day's agreements. It will keep them under the sky until the porch takes custody in the morning, stone to stone, word to word. In the corridor shadows, the partner looks back exactly once, the legal amount of longing for public spaces. The look is whole, nothing owed later, only interest paid in advance to the future. Houses like debts are settled daily. You inventory the proofs, shared chore, matched pace, a plan given speaking parts. None of it is dramatic, all of it binding. The bell, pleased with its arithmetic, goes quiet. Night takes the courtyard the way a good blanket takes a bed. No fuss, just warmth. Rules tuck themselves in. Codes loosen their belts, but do not undress. Love does not mind. It can sleep in any weather when tomorrow has a porch. Inside, rooms light in their corners. A low conversation admits a new name without argument. Somewhere a ledger receives a tidy line. Paper is only the last witness. The first witness is the day you just carried with careful hands. Before you close your own door, you press fingers to the lintel, an old, ordinary blessing learned from people who trusted wood. The gesture is not magic, it is memory training for houses. Houses remember well when asked politely. Sleep will file the scene in the soft cabinets where households keep their best tools. In the drawer marked tomorrow, porch, bands in due course, neighbors who know how to smile by looking away, and hands that have already proven everything they need to prove in the broad daylight of a watched courtyard. The ring waits in the quiet like a patient word, plain as a band of wheat, warmer where fingers tried it on and took it off to learn its temperature. Inside, a line is hidden, a brief devotion meant for two eyes only. Posy rings prefer their poetry on the private side of gold. Circles are efficient vows. They speak without edges. Not all rings are rich. Bone and glass have done as much work as jewels. But a circle is fluent in any material. It says return, it says remain, it says the road is a loop that brings us home nightly. Relics complicate the room in a kind way. A saint's thread, a pilgrim's badge, a sliver of something, once near the holy. These are the quiet relatives of rings, objects that bring a future closer by reminding a heart that eternity can fit in a pocket. You set the badge near the candle so the metal can learn your names. It is not magic, it is memory with handles. Pilgrim signs like shells and tiny saints work as maps for the spirit, persuading worry to walk a known road. The partner studies the ring as if reading the weather in a clear bowl. A thumb moves the band and finds the hidden words, small and certain. Phrases are practical when brief, so brief they fit in the dark and glow anyway. Tokens have to pass public audits. A ring can be a betrothal, a promise, or a memory. A badge can be piety, travel, or thrift. Meanings wear disguises that households understand. The trick is not deception. It is generosity toward witnesses. Then there is the letter, too living to sit still, too private to be spoken on a porch. Letters are forbidden only when they forget their manners. This one remembers. Clean fold, safe hand, route that can be explained if asked. Words on paper travel differently than words in breath. Breath binds, paper returns with evidence. Lovers borrow the habits of clerks. Clear ink, modest metaphors, no declarations that can't walk past a chaperone without tripping. You write as households prefer, useful first, tender second, grain, weather, errands. Between the lines, the real weather. How patience held, how the courtyard taught the hands to speak politically through work. Posy lines make good smuggled clauses. Not the value, but my love, yours to command. In thy breast my heart doth rest. Small enough to hide, durable enough to argue for joy when joy must stay seated. The partner keeps a relic close. A thread said to have kissed a pilgrimage altar. Whether or not the story is precise, the comfort is. Devotion is an architecture that supports more than itself. It is a trellis. Vows climb better with something to hold. You touch the badge with 2 fingers, the way people greet thresholds. The metal is cool, like a morning in a church without candles. Piety does not argue with love. It gives it manners and longevity. Rings and relics share a language of custody. Who holds them, why they are held, what they remember. In a village ledger, possession is an index of care. The partner's palm becomes a pocket that keeps weather kinder than it meant to be. A letter needs a road. Roads require a reason. You draft the reason before you draft the lines. Herbs for a cousin. A question for the mill, a recipe that wants correction. Under each reason, the true sentence curls like a warm cat. When the ink dries, it smells faintly of decisions. You do not seal it with a lover's crest, too bold. A neat fold and a practical hand deliver more safely than wax can promise. Forbiddance is a word that shrinks in daylight. The letter will learn daylight carefully. The partner reads without moving lips, a kind of prayer learned from days when words were rationed. A smile travels the face like sunrise over rooftops, modest, scheduled, unstoppable. The room believes in the letter now. It has been welcomed as a citizen. Relics stand witness to the ring. The ring stands witness to the letter. It is a little parliament of objects whose only law is to keep faith. Even the table votes in favor, knocking once as wood does when it approves. Outside, the lane trades news and wagon with rumors. Inside, a circle joins a badge on the saucer, and the letter, folded, rests between them like a bridge waiting for feet. Bridges do their best work when almost invisible. A brief, soft reminder. If these quiet histories help a heart find rest, a gentle like or subscribe keeps the candles lit and the stories unhurried. Share where the night found this room, so the lanterns can greet each other along the road. There are rules for secrets that want to survive. Keep them ordinary. Share them with saints by accident. Let the page carry what the mouth would spill. Promise only what a ring can hold without bending. You practice the handover with the choreography households prefer. A book to be returned, a note tucked as a bookmark, a thank you spoken at a volume that does not wake anyone who doesn't need waking. The partner traces the inner script with a fingernail, learning it by feel. Memory loves edges. A groove of letters is a path the mind can walk blindfolded. Private words want to be known in more than one way. Posy mottos often ride in French or Latin, the languages of courtliness and altar. Yours is simpler in the tongue of kitchens, which makes the promise sturdier for daily wear. Poetry that survives washing and winter is the right sort. A relic is not a loophole, it is a horizon. It reminds the day that meaning has neighbors called patience and mercy. When the weather argues, those neighbors vote. Lovers benefit from that politics. If anyone asks, the ring is a family piece, the badge a souvenir of prayer, the paper an inventory. None of these are lies. None of them need to be the whole of it. Truth is more obedient when given in portions that fit the time. You tuck the letter where a practical eye would expect dryness and safety, between clean cloth and a recipe slate. The partner tucks the ring where skin will teach it the schedule of the pulse. Relics keep their own counsel. That is what they are for. When parting arrives, it arrives like a seal not pressed but implied, the kind of seal that trust makes visible only to those who promised to look. The lane receives two figures who are already sharing weight, though nothing visible is carried. Night is kind to objects with honest work. Rings keep oaths, badges keep courage, letters keep warmth. Together they keep people, which is the point. The table, emptied, remembers where they lay and will set them again tomorrow without being told. The ring learns the day the way metal learns hands by small, repeated warmths. Inside the hoop, words are short on purpose, because short phrases wear well, a line that fits under the skin and still manages a sunrise when needed. Posy rings like to speak where only the wearer can hear. Inscriptions travel in many tongues. Some write in French like Prenice and Gris, take it kindly, or in English so modest it sounds like conversation, a friend's gift, yours while life. Private scripts prefer the inner curve. Older bands sometimes whisper on the outside where sunlight can read them too. The partner traces the motto as if it were a scene to be checked for drafts. A ring is never only gold. It is a sentence hardened until it can survive winter. When fingers remember the phrase by feel, memory no longer needs lamps. Relics stand nearby with their older law. Pilgrim badges, thin and eager, carry saints the way pockets carry courage. Their pins no more miles than most boots. Their images repeat so the heart can recognize hope quickly, even in bad weather. Some badges say nothing and still speak. Others bring words that worked for strangers and will work again here. A hand that holds a badge is not empty-handed. It holds a map disguised as a saint. The letter waits for its road. Roads prefer reasons. A cousin's recipe wants correcting, a hinge wants oil, a herb list wants a second eye. Between those lines the true line curls, polite and undisturbed. Discretion is simply kindness arranged for travel. Not everyone writes their own letters. Scribes exist like quiet bridges, useful, alert, unavoidable. A phrase may need to choose its language as carefully as its root. Latin keeps secrets by sounding like church, while the kitchen tongue keeps secrets by sounding like the day. You keep the ink plain and let the page hold only what a chaperone could carry without discomfort. The partner knows how to read corridors and courtyards into the margins. Lovers write with furniture as much as with words. Tokens help paper behave. A ring guards the fold by lying atop it like a patient cat. A badge pins the corner to a cloth as if to say, "This stays." When objects co-sign, the room believes the message has a lawful purpose. Posies favor brevity that can live inside a breath. As I ought, I love. Not the value, but my love, I live in hope. These are not fireworks. They are coals banked for the long night, reliable, quick to glow under the bellows of a remembered touch. A messenger is sometimes a person, and sometimes an errand wearing boots. In towns, guilds and houses run their own little post. Apprentices with honest faces, servants with roots like rosaries. Oral messages walk more than letters do, and walk safer in ordinary shoes. If paper must move, let it look like trade. A list, a measure, a price. The secret is not the words. The secret is the folding. Fold quietly, fold evenly, fold in a way even suspicion finds respectable. The partner keeps the ring not as display, as rest. Skin and metal agree to measure hours together. The motto becomes a pulse's neighbor. Pulses are good at making friends they can keep. Relics prefer corners where light remembers to be soft. A shelf near bread, a hook above tools, a nail that discovered itself holy when asked to hold a small saint. Faith is the best hardware. Reliable, forgiving, easy to find again in the dark. Badges also behave like signatures in metal. Names written as pictures for people who learned their letters from windows and bells. A cockleshell says road and return. A tiny visage says intercede. Even the unlettered can read such alphabets. You practice the letters handover the way you practice knots. Once for safety, once for silence. Book with a page mark. Basket with a lining that claims it. The partner receives it as if receiving a guest, with a nod that belongs in a ledger under kindness. Victorian heirs will praise lockets and envelopes with flourishes. The day here prefers a fold that does not advertise itself. When secrets are modest, they live longer and never feel hunted. The ring earns its keep in public. When neighbors' eyes pass over your hands, they see a circle that could mean promise, kin, thrift, memory. All true, none exhaustive. Objects are best at multiple duties. Households approve of efficiency. You think of a spur inscribed for loyalty, a belt clasped with a MOR, a brooches with hearts that learned to swim in the Thames and still remembered their owners. Love leaves metal behind. Metal tells the truth slowly and forever. A short reminder, placed gently. If these small, faithful things have helped the mind loosen its grip, a soft like or subscribe keeps the room lit and the pace unhurried. Name the city, an hour where the night found this story, so lanterns can recognize each other along the road. The partner unfolds the letter later with the courtesy of someone greeting a threshold. No hurry, no performance, just welcome. Lines about grain, about wind, and then the line about courage written in the kitchen's voice. Paper becomes a room when read by someone who believes it. Posies do the same work without paper. A ring carries a sentence that cannot be misdelivered. It never takes a wrong turn. It never needs a scribe. It learns its reader by touch. There's genius in how little a circle needs to manage a lifetime. Relics keep their promises by standing still. They do not argue, they supervise. When worry tries the door, a badge on a nail answers with a picture of a road that was difficult and good. Pictures repair. Letters, though, letters move. Their courage is in the walking. So you teach the letter to walk as a list walks, and the house teaches its doors to behave as if nothing remarkable has happened. This is the choreography that lets tenderness grow in public without tripping anyone. If asked, the partner will say ring and badge came from kin and road. The letter is an inventory. The motto is personal and not for sale. This satisfies both curiosity and custom. Truth folded properly is still truth. Metal chills, then warms, then chills again. That is its prayer cycle. Paper rustles like leaves even indoors. That is its weather. Badges look outward. Rings look inward. Both agree to keep a home like good neighbors who share a wall and never quarrel about it. When the day finishes its duties, the ring sleeps where the pulse can remind it of the point. The badge sleeps where the morning light can find it first. The letter sleeps in a book that decides to become a diary the moment it is trusted. Morning will wake all three without fanfare. And if sleep finds the house before morning does, it will find these small wards on watch, a circle that returns, a saint that points, a page that travels wisely. Such things keep people, and kept people keep their promises, and promises kept are the quietest miracles the village knows. The ring sleeps on the pulse and wakes with it, a circle that already knows the road, because roads are only long versions of loops, and love is a traveler that prefers to return where it began, warmer and certain. Morning lifts the latch, and the lane writes its usual sentence. Cart, dog, voices the sighs of chores. The letter stays folded in a book, behaving like a recipe, which is what the day asks it to be. A journey begins without speeches. Shoes checked, bread wrapped, water agreed upon, a relic pinned where courage can find it with 2 fingers and no ceremony. The partner walks beside, and distances are measured not in miles, but in the ease of silence, the kind that keeps close company without needing to explain itself. Roads test people by repetition. Kindness that repeats is the strongest proof. More convincing than luck, more durable than weather, which admires such proofs and gets out of their way. At a wayside you share the crust that travels well and the look that travels better. Posy words inside the ring serve as a pocket lantern, lighting the next bend without showing off. There is a place where hedges part like sober witnesses, and the question arrives with the modest courage that the kitchen voice uses when asking for more flour. You propose in present tense because promises like strong verbs, and the partner answers in the same grammar a yes that enrolls both of you in a future the lane appears to have been planning anyway. Tokens make their quiet bow, ring turning into sentence, relic into horizon, letter into archive, and the road, satisfied, reduces its stones underfoot as if to encourage your feet. An elder offers counsel the way bread offers crumbs, not to be noticed, only to make sure no one goes hungry for certainty. Porches will do the rest when the bell learns the hour. The porch is prepared as if preparing a map, names to their places, air kept still enough to hold words, stone that enjoys being a listener, neighbors who practice the virtue of not interrupting. Bands will be called like 3 slow waves that wash worry from the shore. But today is a more immediate promise, and consent spoken now is the plank the others will nail into a door everyone can trust. You take the partner's right hand, palm to palm, a choreography older than porches, and say the sentence that the ring has been rehearsing under its breath for days. The elder nods at the diction of duty, the aunt counts witnesses with a seamstress's accuracy, and the bell folds the moment into the hour like a letter into a book. Then the marriage, not a thunderclap, a weather change. Rooms rearrange themselves to fit 2 habits, 2 speeds of laughter, 2 versions of how to finish a task without waste. Bread understands before ledgers do. It rises for 2 as easily as for 1, so long as the hands agree on warmth and waiting. A honeymoon hides inside the ordinary, an early walk that takes the long way on purpose, rivers speaking in shoe sounds, hedges contributing private advice about patience and shade. Travel is brief because home wants to practice being home immediately, yet the path offers blessings in small coins. Berries that stain fingers like signatures, water that lifts thirst and returns it mild. In a market town you purchase nothing grand, only the luxury of time slowed by browsing. A pilgrim badge admired for its faithfulness to the idea of elsewhere. A ribbon for tying recipes into a book that is already deciding to become family. Nights are generous with quiet, and quiet is generous with courage. Skin learns where to rest, how to ask, what to promise without saying, by being there and remaining. There are taboos shaped like guardrails, and they prefer to save rather than scold. No loud secrets, no corners that teach shadows bad lessons, no promises made faster than hands can keep. Touch learns to travel openly where it can and softly where it must, because love that survives houses is love that understands public and private are 2 rooms in the same home. You discover tenderness as a trade route, forehead, breath, shoulder, hands that report back to the ring with what they learned about safety. Even the relic approves by being exactly itself. Still, simple, near enough for touch to borrow a little courage before returning to work. If the world asks for proof, it receives domestic arithmetic. 2 bowls that prefer to be washed together. 2 blankets that share borders without argument. 2 pairs of boots that learn each other's mud. And if the world asks for spectacle, it is offered bread, because bread persuades better than trumpets and is easier to clean up. On one path, the laughter is nearly too loud and remembers just in time. You both smile at your own obedience to quiet, not as fear, as a shared craft. On another, a hedge hides a thrush that demonstrates how to sing without waking the field, a lesson promptly copied. Nights at home become a study in warmth management. Coals banked, stories chosen for their drowsy endings, kisses that behave like commas where full stops would be unkind to sleep. Taboos are honored the way roads are, by walking them carefully so they continue being roads tomorrow, unbroken and willing. You write more letters than you send, because not every feeling needs a journey. Some prefer to live folded inside a book as a weather report that reads, clear, with a chance of mercy. The sent ones travel escorted by errands, wearing their disguises like good manners, and return as answers in the partner's eyes when no ink is present. The ring becomes an hourly reassurance, less jewel than metronome. It counts bread, steps, jokes, the timing of a look that arrives exactly when a day tries to be heavier than it is. Sometimes a posy phrase repeats in the mind uninvited and is welcomed anyway, because helpful things may interrupt as they please. There is a small journey taken only by hands, from task to face and back, that refines what the house calls acceptable into what the heart calls necessary. It is not rebellion, it is skill. Rules, pleased to have helped, pretend not to notice that kindness always takes the shortest path regardless of signage. At the church porch, neighbors who prefer order admire how vows have continued to be present tense in practice, not only in their first saying. Present tense is a habit, not a ceremony. Bands conclude with the quiet weight of nothing left to object to, and the bell, having done its job, resumes its interest in weather. For celebration, there is a day of permission where laughter may stand on tiptoe, where hands are allowed to speak their whole sentence, and a room that draws the shutters politely and asks the moon to mind its own business. This is not defiance. It is a promised privacy cashed in exactly as agreed, a softness that remembers to turn out the lamps and thank the floor for its silence. You travel a short distance to a mill pond that believes in reflecting only what improves the face. The partner laughs at the pond's good manners. You agree to visit often and be improved likewise. A borrowed room offers fresh linen that smells like wind and prudence. Even prudence can be a romance when it makes room for sleep in the arms of its favorite person. Taboos are not enemies when they are understood. They are elders that prefer the young to arrive at joy unbruised, and therefore ask for patience, for doors closed from the inside, for love that lights candles rather than fireworks. So the candles are lit, and the quiet grows taller, and the house is grateful for two people who are kind to its timbers and to each other. After the small honeymoon hours pass, the road back is shorter, as if distance itself approves of promises kept without witnesses, and therefore steps aside. Home receives you with the satisfaction of a ledger that likes its columns. Two names aligned, one hearth doing the work of many, a schedule that anticipates ease without neglecting duty. Letters now speak of shared things, less coded because less alone. Still discreet, because discretion is a courtesy offered to the future as well as to the present. A relic gains no new shine, which is appropriate. Relics supervise by being dull and steadfast. Shine is for brief occasions and sometimes for puddles. On a day that believes in gifts, the partner adds a tiny badge in the kitchen's corner. No announcement, only a nail that suddenly remembers being holy again. Kitchens deserve chapels, and sometimes they get them. In return, you tuck a posy phrase into a margin of the recipe book where only two cooks will find it and pronounce it true with flour on their hands. There are intimacies that never touch skin, shared jokes that cannot be explained, a look that repairs a hard morning faster than food, a way of lifting a pot together that gives the room an opinion of marriage so favorable it blushes. And there are intimacies that do, in rooms that hold secrets responsibly, where the ring presses a soft circle into the palm and the relic nods from its hook like a saint who understands the body is an honest chapel. If anything is forbidden now, it is only harm, only hurry, only the kind of secrecy that sours. Everything else is a garden tended with the tools you have chosen together, and keep sharp by laughter. The village notices not by peering, but by resting better. Households sleep well when love minds the rules, and then teaches them to be generous. Evenings become a kind of gentle travel. Stories wander, hands arrive at familiar destinations. A kiss finds the right shelf and waits there like a spice labeled for easy finding. In the morning, modesty goes to market with a list. In the evening, affection comes home without receipts, which is acceptable, since affection returns interest. At the edge of sleep, the ring is warm as a hearth pebble, the relic steady as a small star, the letter tucked where tomorrow can read it if asked. These three keep watch like a kindly militia. They do not patrol. They linger, and lingering is all that safety requires when two people have become each other's best proof that the day intends good. If a journey calls again, it will be shorter for being shared, and the proposal will live inside ordinary talk, like a spring under field grass, ready to show itself when the foot finds it by accident and laughs. Marriage remains a verb here, a present tense carried in pockets and placed on tables and worn on fingers, never finished, always polite to the hour that invited it. And as for taboos, they relax in chairs like tired uncles after a feast, content that kindness has learned all the rules and uses them to write a story where everyone gets home dry and smiling. The night, satisfied with its stewardship, pulls the blanket higher, and the house, which has been paying attention, closes its eyes last, a loyal witness to rings that kept their sentences, relics that pointed the way, and letters that traveled wisely from one good hand to another. The lane carries laughter ahead of them, too bright for the hour, and the courtyard hears it the way a ledger hears a spilled drop of ink, small but permanent. They are young enough to mistake dusk for privacy, and privacy for permission. The wall learns their breath before the house does. A kiss likes to think it is only itself. It forgets about porches and bands and the bell that marks hours as if keeping accounts. It forgets the ant in the doorway and the steward's wife who knows how long errands should take when nothing unusual occurs. Custom is not cruel, but it is exact. Meetings happen where eyes can travel. Hands speak through work, not through corners. Promises are present tense and spoken into air that knows how to remember. The kiss unchaperoned is a sentence spoken in the wrong room. Church courts prefer order to punishment, but they know how to count. Fornication, attempted or completed, belongs to their bench, along with bastardy, defamation, and promises made carelessly enough to bruise other promises. Their tools are penance, public confession, and when pride refuses, the cold shadow of excommunication. Canon law is strangely kind and strict at once. It prizes free consent so highly that present tense vows can make a marriage without priest or porch. Yet it dislikes unions that pretend to be marriages only when cornered. Better a secret marriage than a public sin, say the books that trained the benches. Neighbors know the soft law as well as the hard. A girl's reputation is a family's roof. A boy's boast is a draft that lifts tiles. The steward's wife does the arithmetic faster than any court. Who saw, who will tell, who must be calmed before Sunday. The couple, hand in hand now, because hiding has failed, stand where the porch would prefer them to have stood first. They are brave in the young way, which is to say brave about the wrong thing, and uncertain about the right one. Questions come. Was there consent de presente now, or only a plan for later with a kiss moved ahead of its appointment? Did hands make promises the mouths have not yet said aloud? The elder who asks does not enjoy the asking. Elders prefer weaving to unpicking. Custom suggests a remedy that is also a kindness. Bring the future forward. If the yes was true, let it be spoken where stone hears and air witnesses. If the yes was only heat, say so now before heat becomes harm. The porch is patient. It has seen both kinds. Youth chooses quickly. That is its virtue when it accepts guidance. Present consent becomes the door the couple should have used first. Right hands meet, words are said in the grammar that binds, and the bell takes their uncertainty and files it under past error, current resolution. Church authority can be theatrical when needed, but prefers correction to spectacle. Penance, if any, is measured like cloth. Enough to cover what was exposed, not enough to trip the wearer. Public confession and a white sheet happens when pride refuses ordinary mending. Generosity prevents it when humility has already arrived. The costs are counted in smaller coins than shame, a few cold looks thawed by steady work. A delay while bands are called in their proper 3 Sundays. A promise to meet in light, with errands that explain their footsteps. None of these costs ruin the house. They repair it. But there are other paths in the ledger. If youth had insisted, if corners had become habit, the court could have made an example. Penance before the congregation, suspension from the sacraments, even the long silence of excommunication for hearts that prefer secrecy to peace. The couple are lucky in their elders. Advice arrives as chores, sweep here, carry there, be seen mending what was loosely held. Reputation, like bread, rises again if warmth is steady and drafts are kept out. Neighbors learn how to forgive what is fixed. Forgiveness in villages looks like people returning to their usual errands without pausing to invent new versions of yesterday. The aunt buys onions from the mother who was angry on Sunday and conversational by Wednesday. Canon law's kindness is not naivety. It knows the difference between a mistake and a plan. It also knows that consent, once spoken rightly, creates a marriage that courts must honor even if it arrived by the side door. No priest is needed to make the bond valid. The porch and the present tense are enough. Young hearts, meanwhile, must learn the art of being seen. Love that cannot live in daylight frays fast. The steward's wife teaches the girl the household's map of watchful spaces. An older brother teaches the boy how to let a joke arrive where defensiveness would have arrived before. They practice public tenderness as if practicing a trade. Pass the jar, share the rope, speak the name at a volume that sounds like respect, not ownership. The difference is audible even to children and dogs. At night, the lesson is gentler. The ring, recently plain and now plain and certain, learns a new address on a new hand. The house listens and hears doors closing from the inside. Modesties sound, not secrecies. The relic on the nail glances down and approves without moving. the kiss returns to its proper office. It becomes punctuation instead of plot, commas for breath, not exclamation points for rebellion. Youth discovers that softness is stronger than noise, and that noise was expensive mostly because it woke people who needed sleep. On Sunday, bands call the village to silence 3 times, not to scold, but to invite lawful objections that do not arrive. The bell enjoys the task. It admires order that began as mercy. If anyone remembers the corner, they pretend to remember the porch instead. This is the village's genius, to edit without lying, to choose which shelf to store a story on so that it can be reached by people who need the instruction, but not the sting. After, the couple walk the lane with a more useful bravery. They are still young, still quick to heat, but the heat keeps the kitchen warm now. It does not try to burn the hedge. Chaperones become furniture again. Furniture resumes its favorite task of being ignored by people who have learned to behave. And later, when another young pair begin to mistake dusk for permission, the first couple will clear their throats in the exact way that saved them. This is how custom becomes guardian rather than jailer. It is passed on by people who remember both the cost and the kindness. So the cost of a kiss is counted, then returned in change. Some patience, some public steps, some present tense words said where walls know how to keep promises. It is not a tragedy. It is a household budget, corrected before the winter. The church courts keep their benches and their ledgers. They prefer not to use the harsher lines. They are grateful when a porch and a few good elders make their work unnecessary. They will always be there if needed. Kindness is vigilant, not lax. And the couple, having learned to be seen, find that affection grows best where eyes can travel and ears can rest. The village sleeps more easily because 2 young people stopped making it nervous. The bell, tired of counting mistakes, returns to counting hours, which is what it was made to count. At first, the village edits the story in their favor. Longer errands become helpful, a blush becomes wind, and the aunt's throat clears only once an afternoon. Edits are Mercy wearing an apron. Mercy likes to work, but not to be overworked. A week of good behavior repairs many things. A single corner undoes a week. Corners have witnesses no one remembers installing. A bean that creaks on schedule, a child that likes to count, a dog that chooses the worst moment to practice loyalty. Rumor does not accuse, it implies. Implied wrongs are heavier than spoken ones. They don't know where to sit, and so they sit everywhere. The steward's wife begins a map of who saw what when, the way careful people map leaks before a storm. The couple mean well and mean now, but now needs rooms with windows. A kiss that keeps choosing alleys asks the alley to be responsible. Alleys are seldom responsible. The aunt says this like weather, matter of fact, accurate, not unkind. Soft law steps back. Church law steps forward with a ledger under its arm. Ecclesiastical courts prefer to mend rather than punish, but they count on cooperation. Fornication promises bent out of shape, slander that injures a maiden's name. These live on their pages. The first summons is a paper that behaves like a knock. It asks for presents, for answers as simple as yes and no, for humility to dress properly. The couple hold it together, hands close, not touching. They have learned that public skin confuses arithmetic. Canon's questions are plain. Has consent been exchanged in the present? Was there a promise for the future mistaken for a license today? Are there witnesses who can calm the air? The law honors de presenti because it binds. It rebukes secrecy because it breaks things that must be carried by many hands. There are remedies gentler than shame, penance measured to the offense. A Sunday in the porch's shadow, a confession shaped to instruct without humiliating, a short fast that teaches appetite to wait. Courts are happier when repentance arrives already dressed, but this pair have the gift and curse of zeal. They want goodness quickly, and quickly is often loud. Loudness wakes sleeping quarrels. The lane becomes a panel of judges who never asked to be. A second corner happens, worse because it taught the first how to be normal. Now custom is tired. Tired custom sends for law the way a mother sends for a stern aunt when chores are not done by supper. The summons becomes less like a knock and more like a hand on the shoulder. Consequences begin to stack like bowls after a feast. A public penance sized to be noticed. A brief denial of the sacraments until order is restored. A warning that excommunication exists not as a threat, as a last fence before a cliff. No one wants the cliff. The boy learns that boasting is a tax levied on the future. Every word costs a kindness later. The girl learns that reputations are looms. If the warp is frayed, the weft must work twice as hard. Both learn to love lintels and doorways that listen and tell no tales. Neighbors who prefer not to judge begin to judge anyway to protect their own roofs. The village is not cruel. It is defensive. Roofs must keep out rain. Names must keep out drafts. Children must grow up where the floorboards are not the loudest voices. An elder proposes a timetable that feels like winter. Slow, necessary, chaste. Meet only where sun can read lips. Let errands, not shadows, be the courtyards. Speak the vow on the porch openly, if the vow is what the mouths have been attempting to say in alleys. Breach of promise lurks as a separate beast in some places in later times. Damages, reputations priced like livestock, pain tallied in coins. In this village the coin is trust, and the debt is payable in steady work and visible restraint. Clerks take notes with the charity of people who have seen worse, and the accuracy of people who are paid to remember. They write the names small and the council large. Custom calls this kindness with a good memory. The couple try the new map. They sit where benches prefer them, walk where lanes are crowded, reserve the alley for barrels and cats. In public their hands become skilled at speaking through objects again. Jar, rope, lid, loaf. The language is slower, more legible. But youth is quicksilver. A fair comes, music arrives, shadows get taller, and rules that were easy by day become suggestions at dusk. Suggestion is the enemy of vows not yet spoken. A third corner would make a pattern, and patterns are what courts punish to teach the village a different song. The steward's wife sees temptation before it names itself. She sends the boy across town for a missing measure, and the girl to her mother with a message that takes 2 hands to carry. Interference is a kind of mercy that saves pride by inventing errands. Still, rumor owns a quick horse. Words like incontinency and lewd carriage are ugly because they are clumsy. They bruise true stories while trying to catch false ones. The elder persuades the couple to answer before the bench, rather than after the village has finished inventing its own verdict. In the hall that smells of ink and cold stone, the questions are syllables of a language the pair are learning. Have you pledged yourselves now, here, as man and wife? If yes, then marry plainly, publicly, and be done with corners. If no, then let there be distance equal to your promise's size. They look at each other with the courage that grew up since the first kiss misbehaved. The answer teeters. A porch waits. A ring inside a pocket learns to be heavier. The relic on its pin would prefer to see daylight. Penance is offered in a size that feels like a winter walk rather than a fall into cold water. 3 Sundays of banns, avoidance of shadowed places, service in the nave where everyone can see you practice reverence and steadiness. Penance is not cruelty. It is scaffolding. The pair accept the scaffold. They learn to wave with both hands occupied. They learn that eyes are not enemies. They are guardians hired by households to keep sleep from leaving. They sleep for the first time in weeks like people who have stopped arguing with the village's weather. Yet hard situations continue their quiet work. A relative takes offense for sport and must be pacified. A former sweetheart discovers a talent for sighs that travel. Sighs are missiles in small towns. They land everywhere. The elder catches them with jokes and chores. A slip occurs that is not a sin, but will be treated as one if it repeats. A laugh too late at night, a shared shortcut, when the long way was recommended. The steward's wife inventories the day and finds 2 items missing, patience and 1 more witness. They are restocked by morning. Meanwhile, the court's patience has edges. Repeat offenders graduate from penance to the colder bench where excommunication's shadow sits. No one mentions it to the pair. The elder prefers speed and goodness to fear and compliance. Still, the shadow exists, which is how shadows help. The couple are learning slower bravery. Not the kind that kisses walls. The kind that carries water under eyes and never spills. Villages give medals for this, invisible, minted in ease, returned to bedrooms that prefer quiet to theater. On a final evening before the porch has its say, temptation arrives dressed as celebration. Music from the fair leans against the courtyard. The aunt's throat clears twice. The lane offers 4 unsupervised steps and calls them harmless. 4 steps are enough to fall. They stop at 3. 3 is a number that pleases both love and law. Close, not cornered. Warm, not secret. The ring in the pocket cools and approves. The relic is a small, proud weight. The letter remains folded, having chosen wisdom over travel tonight. Morning will ask for choices with stone beneath them. The bench will prefer brevity. The bell will be punctual. Consequences travel invisibly alongside, not malicious, merely consistent, ready to become either mending or sentence, depending on the next word spoken in air that remembers. Consequences begin as reminders. Doors stay more open. Errands gain witnesses. The aunt's throat learns new punctuation. This is not cruelty. It is household first aid. The way cloth is tightened on a frame before it sags. Young hearts learn that being seen is a kind of safety, not a sentence. When courtyards can't hold the lesson alone, a paper arrives like a formal breath. It calls the pair to speak plainly before people whose benches smell of ink and cold stone. These are church courts. They keep marriages straight, guard promises, and mend scandals so roofs don't leak reputation into the beds beneath. Penance, when given, is sized like a coat in winter, enough to warm, not drown. A white sheet for public confession if pride refuses subtler repairs. A barefoot walk to the porch. A fast modestly measured. A brief pause from the sacraments until order returns. The aim is correction, not theater. Excommunication stands far off like a cliff, named so everyone knows where not to walk, used only when every small bridge is refused. It is less thunder than silence, doors that won't open, rights withheld, a community that cannot safely lean on a name until mending happens. Between penance and cliff lies the work of bands and porch. 3 Sundays ask the village to raise lawful impediments or be still. Stone hears names, so secrets stop being accidents. This is how a kiss that misbehaved learns to wear daylight properly and stops costing everyone sleep. Warnings come as stories the village keeps ready. A boast once traveled faster than truth and taxed a boy's future for years. A corner became a habit and made a girl's errands feel like trials. A vow delayed until heat cooled, and then sorrow had to be folded publicly. These are not curses. They are maps. In the hall, the questions are simple, so answers can be brave. Was consent exchanged now in the present with intent to be spouse to spouse? If yes, speak it where air records and stone repeats. If not, let distance equal promise. Let touch return to tools until words catch up. Some learn fastest by mending in the open, penance done steadily, bands called cleanly, neighbors invited to watch order set itself straight. Public repair prevents private rot. It is unglamorous, and that is why it works. The cost of ignoring these rails grows in small coins that add to a purse. A mother who trusts less. A steward who counts steps. A clerk who writes longer than necessary. A bell that marks time with the tone it reserves for worry. Better to pay early with patience than late with loneliness. Church warnings were once painted in color, above doors, judgment scenes, and hell mouths. Unsettle in the way storms are unsubtle. They were there to keep the fearful safe and the bold careful. Even when paint fades, the habit remains. Remember the cliff so the path feels kind. When mercy succeeds, it looks like ordinary days. The couple learn to let laughter wear slippers after dusk, to pass the jar instead of fingers when eyes are awake, to store heat where vows keep it honest. Rooms with doors closed from the inside, not corners with doors behind them. If pride insists, penalties become fluent. A Sunday in the porch's shadow with a humble garment. A spoken confession shaped to teach more than shame. A season of being first to arrive, last to leave. So everyone sees patience lift what haste dropped. Such penances are bridges, not pits. Breach of promise, in some courts and times, could be priced and paid, reputation tallied like grain. Here the coin is trust, and the payment is visibility and steady work until the ledger smiles. Money can settle accounts. Only patience settles fears. Youth hears warnings best when they arrive as chores. Carry this where all can see. Speak that in a place with echo. Let your yes be heard by people who can repeat it without invention. These tasks are not punishment. They are scaffolding for the house being built. Neighbors help by forgetting on purpose. Forgetting is work. It requires new scenes to replace the old, new errands to talk about, bands to listen to and not object. The bell prefers this music. It is made for hours, not scandals. Clergy, for their part, prefer to bless what households have already ordered. Canon law honors free consent, dislikes secrecy, and saves its heavy tools for stubborn harm. Most days gentle tools do. Counsel in the nave, a list of do this instead, and a promise to stand on the porch when words are ready. What remains as a warning to any young heart tempted by corners is not fear, but arithmetic. A kiss kept in shadow multiplies witnesses and divides trust. The same kiss, spoken through vows where stone hears, multiplies rest and divides nothing. Choose the math that lets homes sleep. The couple, wiser now, become the village's quiet tutors. Their laughter draws curtains instead of crowds. Their errands leave footprints instead of stories. Their porch remembers voices that learned how to be present without apology. This is how custom renews itself, repaired by those who once tested it. And as the house settles for the night, the last counsel is small and practical. Let bands do their good work. Let porches hold words. Let courts remain bored because kindness arrived early. Rings speak softly. Relics point steadily. Letters travel wisely. Such things keep people, and kept people keep peace.